Welcome back, everybody. In this video, I'm going to compare the cameras on the Galaxy S24, the Galaxy S23, the Galaxy S22, and the Galaxy S21. I've taken a bunch of pictures with all of their cameras. I've taken videos, I've taken selfies, I've taken slow-mo clips, and much more, because I wanted to show you how big or how small the difference is between all of these phones, so you can make a better decision on what phone you should upgrade to, or if you should even upgrade your phone in the first place. As always, you have Amazon links for all of these phones down below in the description.
Let's begin by talking a little bit about the main camera, where, as you can see, there's a very big difference between the Galaxy S21 and the rest of the phones. This is because the Galaxy S21 has a 12 megapixel camera as opposed to the 50 megapixels on the rest of the models. And also because the S21 has a way smaller sensor than the rest of the phones. Of course, if you have more megapixels and a bigger sensor, results are going to be way better, which is the case in the S22, S23, and S24. To be honest, I was expecting for there to be an improvement from the S21 to the S24, but I was not expecting it to be so abrupt, because the main differences between the S21 and S22, once you get past that, they're all pretty much identical. Maybe there are some differences if you zoom in and you start pixel peeping, but between the S22 and the S24, like, as you can see, if you just take a normal picture and you look at it without zooming or doing anything crazy, they both look pretty identical. Then when it comes to the periscope or zoom camera, things get a little bit interesting because we get the opposite situation. The S24, S23, and S22 all have 10 megapixels on these cameras, but the S21, which is the older out of all of them, has 64 megapixels. For some reason, Samsung is so weird with megapixel counts. They gave the oldest out of these phones the most amount of megapixels, which is a little counterintuitive for people that are not, into cameras or into tech. But of course, that doesn't mean the S21 has a better camera or it's going to take better photos, because the sensor, again, on the S21 is the smallest by far out of all of them. So you're going to get less detail, worst low light performance, and overall worst results than with the rest of the phones. And this is something you may not notice at broad daylight, but when you take pictures at night, it becomes very apparent. As you can see, results on the S22, S23, and S24 are a lot clearer. They have a lot more detail, and also they look closer to what I was seeing in real life when I was taking the pictures. And then, of course, we have the classic ultra-wide camera, which is exactly the same camera on all of these phones. They all have 12 megapixels. They all have the same sensor size. There's only a few small differences in the optics between the S21 and S24, but I mean, as you can see, taking a look at the pictures, that difference is not apparent at all, unless you zoom in and you, I guess, take a microscope and start looking at the individual pixels, try to find some differences. Well, maybe there is a little bit of a color shift between the older phones and the newer phones, but that's just because the processor is coloring the image in a slightly different way, and it has nothing to do with the quality.
Then when it comes to video using the main camera, as you can see, there's not that big of a difference between any of these phones. Maybe we can see a little bit of a weird tint on the Galaxy S21. We can see that the S22 becomes a little bit more sharp, and then we can see a lot of bokeh on the S23 and S24 because they're the ones that have the bigger sensors. But these are all tiny differences. I mean, for the most part, all of these phones give pretty decent results in dynamic range, in colors, in bokeh, in sharpness. They're all very sharp. I guess this is a bit of an unfair comparison because I'm just filming myself. If I decided to go cinematic and made videos that are a little bit more complex, that are a little bit more challenging, maybe we could see a bigger difference between the newer models and the older models. But when you're vlogging or just making a normal video, the quality difference between all of these phones is, let's put it this way, small. And well, of course, we also have to talk about the selfie camera, where we can also see some noticeable improvements between the older models and the newer models. On paper, there is a difference because the S21 and S22 have 10 megapixels, and the S22 and the S23 and 4 have 12 megapixels, but that is not the reason why the newer phones look better. The reason why they look better is because they have bigger sensors. On the newer phones, we get like an actually bigger sensor, like the square that captures the light, and we also get better optics. So as a result, we're going to get better dynamic range, better color representation. We're going to get a tad bit more bokeh, although there's barely any bokeh on both phones because there's, selfie cameras have tiny sensors. They all shoot at 4K, so they're all very sharp, but maybe because they have bigger sensors, I don't know. I don't notice that, but like technically it should be the case. The bigger the sensor, the more light, so the more sharpness you get. It's one of those things where there are differences, and if you pay attention to the details, you can notice those differences. But let's be honest, it's a selfie camera. You don't need it to be good. It's meant to take casual selfies or, group photos or, simple stuff like that. So all these phones are perfectly capable, but yes, between S21 and S24, there is a noticeable difference.
So, conclusion, are there improvements on the S24? Yes, there are some improvements on the S24 as opposed to the older models, but they are very small. Unless you have an S21 or an older phone, you're not going to notice a drastical difference if you buy the newer model. I guess phones are now just like close to perfect, and companies are having a tough time giving us more stuff because we have all we need. But yeah, like if you have an S23, don't expect any noticeable difference between your phone and the new S24 because maybe there are some on-paper changes when it comes to the optics and the sensors, but like in real life between S23 and S24, and you saw it all through the test, there's absolutely no visible difference. Anyways, as I said earlier, you have Amazon links for all of these phones, and now that the video is about to end, I recommend you go check them out because the prices are pretty good. So yeah, go take a look.